Truth is, most of you watching this video right now are probably leaving hundreds and maybe even thousands of dollars on the table every time you book a load. I know for a fact I was when I first started dispatching. However, over time I've picked up some tricks that have allowed me to gross $5,000 every single week from just one truck. And in this video, I'm going to show you how you can do that too. Alright guys, it's actually much easier to negotiate than you think it is, but it's only easy if you fully prepared for the call. And the very first thing you need to do before you call is figure out your CPM or cost per mile. Now, I'm sure you've heard a bunch of people on YouTube tell you to figure out your CPM, however, they forget to tell you some key things. But before I get into that, let me just quickly explain what a CPM is for those of you that don't know. So, your CPM or cost per mile is just a total of all your fixed and variable costs on a per mile basis. Essentially, your CPM will tell you your business's break-even point, and it tells you the bare minimum to charge for your loads. If you don't know your CPM, I've made an Excel sheet that you can download and keep to plug numbers into and figure out your CPM within 5 minutes. And if you're interested, you can go to guild22.com and find it under templates, or just look in the description of this video and I'll make sure to leave a link. Now, when you know your CPM, most people will just tell you to charge 50 cents more or something arbitrary like that and call it a day. But that's the lazy way of doing things. And again, you're losing money because of it. So what should you do? Well, when you're figuring out your CPM, make sure you put an amount under driver pay that you want to pay yourself. Most of the time when owner-operators want to calculate their CPM, they don't put anything under driver pay because they assume it's for carriers with drivers. No. Even if you don't have a driver, this is where you get to decide how much you want to pay yourself first. If you're having trouble coming up with a number, try answering this question. As an owner-operator, what is the least amount of money I would be willing to make every single year? For me personally, this would be about $50,000, and since I only want to drive about 7,000 miles a month, I can work backwards from there and calculate my driver pay to be about 60 cents per mile. Now obviously when I put this number in, my new CPM will be much higher. However, whenever I book loads, I won't really have to wonder how much money I'm gonna make this year, because as long as I keep booking loads over this new CPM, I know I'll end up making more than $50,000 every single year. But don't just get lazy now, because you have to treat this new CPM as your break-even point and just forget that you're paying yourself $50,000 every year. This CPM will now be your new baseline, and now from here we can build on that. Now that you know your real CPM, the next step is to figure out what routes you want to run. So start off by picking 3 to 5 routes that you would like to run and ignore every other market. So for example, if I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia, I would pick 3 to 5 routes going out of Atlanta. Let's just say I want to be back home every other day. I would pick 3 to 5 routes that end up in medium to large size cities that are 400 to 500 miles away, such as St. Louis, Louisville, and Cincinnati. You may be asking yourself, well, what if one day I'm not able to find any loads for these routes? What do I do? Well, I have some good news for you, because you don't really have to worry about that. The reason I'm telling you to pick medium to large size cities as your destination is so we can set a 50-mile destination deadhead and find a whole bunch of loads around these bigger cities that typically run for the same rate. So again, you won't ever be in a shortage of loads. The goal is to pick 3 to 5 routes that you can become an expert in and just hyper focus on them. Owner-operators that follow the hype and start running loads all over the country are usually clueless on what the actual rates are, and they heavily depend on the mercy of brokers. Don't become one of these owner-operators, Pick a few lanes, 3 to 5 lanes, and become an expert in them so you know how the rates change and when they will change and why they're changing. This brings me to my next point, which is research your market. Now that you've picked a market, it's time to do some research, and there are 2 ways that I like to do this. The first method is what almost everyone uses, which is the broker to carrier spot rate. If you use a DAT load board, you probably already know about the broker to carrier spot rate, but if you don't and you want to find it, just log into your load board, go to the top right hand side, click on the toolbox icon, and when you click on it, a drop down menu will pop up, and when it does, just scroll down to where it says quick rate search and click on that. You can use this feature to quickly check spot rates and get a historical 15-day estimate of the average spot rate. Just remember, the broker to carrier spot rate is historical data. It doesn't represent current market conditions. Go back 5 seconds and listen to that again, because many owner-operators will just ask for that rate from brokers and call it a day. Don't get me wrong, it's a good start, but again, it's the lazy way of booking loads, and if you're watching this video, you're probably not the lazy type. If you want to make the most money possible, like we all do, then you have to take into account historical data and current data. We already know the 15-day historical data from the broker to carrier spot rate, but to find the current data, we have to look at another DAT feature called market conditions. Under market conditions, you're able to see how hot your market is and how much negotiation power you have when calling brokers. Basically, if your market is red, it means it's a hot market and you can definitely charge higher than the broker to carrier spot rate. But if it's blue, it means it's a cool market and you might not have that much negotiation power. Even if your market is blue, it doesn't mean that you can't charge higher than the broker to carrier spot rate. It just means that it's going to be harder to negotiate that rate and you may have to settle for something less. If you want to learn more about this feature, you can check out my last video. I go a little more in detail in there. Anyways, combining the historical and current market data will give you a really good idea of what to charge brokers when you call them. Here's another pro tip for you guys. Instead of calling the brokers that you want to call right away, you can test out the market by calling for loads under the similar matches section. You can do this by setting up filters for all 3 to 5 of your lanes and highballing brokers from the similar search results section. The reason I'm telling you to do this for loads under the similar search results section is because there'll be a bunch of loads there that you won't want to pick up for whatever reason. Maybe the load is too heavy or the deadhead miles are too high, who knows. Regardless of what the reason is, call these brokers and highball them. By doing this, you'll get an idea of how high a broker is willing to negotiate with you before they just laugh at you and end the call. Obviously, if the broker to carrier spot rate is $2 per mile, don't waste your time by calling them and asking for $5 per mile. If the market is hot, for the first few calls, ask for $2.50 per mile, then $2.75 per mile, then $3 per mile. Do this until you hit a cap, and you'll find out pretty quick where that is. Just to make it clear, step 1 is to calculate your CPM. Step 2 is to figure out 3 to 5 routes that you want to run. Step 3 is to do some market research based on historical and current data. And finally, step 4 is to just call the brokers that you want to call and negotiate with them. Now that you have a really good idea of what your break-even point is, your base market spot rate is, and your max market spot rate is, it's time to just pick up the phone and call. You've already done all the hard work and research, but there's still a few more questions you'll have to ask when you call. When you call, remember to make a note of the commodity, the pickup time, delivery time, the name of the receiver company, and the load's weight. To most people, these are just common load details that you would ask for, and truthfully they are, but I like to think of these items as negotiation pieces. If, for example, the weight was 42,000 pounds for this hypothetical load, I know that's a heavy load that many people won't pick up because of the extra fuel expense it will take. So I'll use that to my advantage later in the call to charge a higher rate. Likewise, if the delivery is at 1 p.m., I know a lot of carriers will stay away from this load because they're gonna have trouble finding a return load that picks up that late. Again, I purposely like to seek out loads like this because then I have an easier time negotiating higher rates with brokers. Speaking of which, when I call a broker, I like to throw out my rate first. I do this because the first rate that I'm gonna throw out is my max rate that I figured out in step 3 by calling other brokers. I know the broker is not going to give me a load at that rate, but I throw this number out first to set an anchor price. Now, every dollar that I come down from my anchor price, the broker will think that he's getting a good deal because I'm making a sacrifice. Also, just to add on, after you throw out your anchor price, all you need to do is be quiet. I'm not trying to be rude, but many people have a bad habit of throwing out their anchor price and then trying to justify it immediately and explain the rate that they're charging. Don't do that. Instead, throw your max rate out. Let's just say it's $1,300. The broker will obviously come back and say, no, I can't do that. The max I can do on this load is $1,000. And that's when you come back and say, well, the load is really heavy at 42,000 pounds and the delivery time is really late, so I might not be able to find a load back in time. Let's just meet at $1,200 and I'll deliver this load for you. Obviously there might be more back and forth than that, you know, it's not just gonna be that easy, but the point I'm trying to make is don't try to justify yourself right away and bring your price down slowly. Don't jump from $1,300 to $1,050. You know, the broker will know right away that you really have no idea what the spot rate is and that you're just guessing. At the end of the day, guys, you can only really get better at negotiating through practice, you know. I didn't start making $5,000 overnight, you know. It took years of learning the hard way to be able to do this on a consistent basis, and now hopefully you're able to do it too. If you still feel uncomfortable contacting brokers and you don't really want to deal with that whole process, I do offer a dispatching service for carriers and owner-operators that you can apply for. If you're interested, you can go to guild22.com/careers or just click the link in the description. So yeah, I hope you guys found this video useful. If you did, make sure you scroll down and like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications. Also, while you're down there, leave a comment and let me know what advice would you give others when negotiating rates. And yeah, with that being said, thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.